the main result is that approximation theorem we had last time. So, let me just write that. Let W be a closed convex set in, of course, non-empty, okay, non-empty, closed convex set in a Hilbert space H, then for every x in H there exists unique W x in W such that the distance between x minus W x is the minimum, x minus W for every W not equal to W x W in W. Okay. This is the main theorem. In particular, if W is a closed subspace, a subspace is automatically a convex set, this result is true. So, in particular, we can take W to be a closed subspace. Okay, so this is the first main, probably one of the main lemmas in Hilbert space. Okay, one of the fundamental lemmas from which many things follow. Okay, that you have the Hilbert space, you have a closed subspace. Of course, if x is in H itself, automatically the approximation is X itself. The non-trivial case is when x is in W. Outside W, then there is a W x here which is closest to it, okay, and nobody else is closer than him. He is unique. There is a unique fellow who is closest to him. That is what the so in other words, this distance, and if you take any other point, that distance will be more. That is what this is the smallest. Okay, anybody else will be more. Any other distance will be more, and that is the closest distance. Okay. Now, as I said, this is the fundamental lemma in Hilbert spaces. Many things follow from this. Now, the one thing that we are going to head towards to is some simple generalization of what we have learnt in linear algebra. Okay. So, our goal is the following. Recall first linear algebra. So, what is it that, what exactly do I mean? Suppose I have H a finite dimensional inner product space. Now, I am restricting to finite dimensional, that is why I say linear algebra. If you have a finite dimensional space, it is inner product in any norm, it is complete. So, it is automatically a Hilbert space. So, any finite dimensional inner product space, of course, will be a Hilbert space, because any finite dimensional space is complete in any norm. Okay. So, now we have this finite dimensional space. Even if you want to think the model as our 3-dimensional space, then for example, look at R3, simplest situation, 3-dimensional space. Okay. Now, if we take any subspace, what is a subspace now? A subspace is either 1-dimensional, in which case it is a line, 2-dimensional, in which case it is a plane through the origin, or 3-dimensional, in which case it is the whole space. So, just like that take as plane. Okay. So, let us take a plane through the origin. So, that is a W a subspace. Okay. So, suppose you take a subspace W, then in this, at least in the R3 case, you see there is this normal to this subspace. Okay. And that direction is a one dimensional subspace. And that is what is known as the W perp. What is W perp? The set of all vectors which are perpendicular to everything in W. So, the W perp, so let us take W as subspace, say a plane, the normal vectors. Okay. Then there are many things that we know, namely, if you take any vector in the space, it can be projected orthogonally onto the plane, and there will be one vector in the plane and one vector normal. This is the resolution of forces, and so every vector can be decomposed as a vector in the plane and the vector along the normal, and this decomposition is unique, which is saying that the whole space can be written as the sum of this space plus this space, and that decomposition is a direct sum decomposition because it is a unique decomposition. So, we know that the whole space H is W plus direct sum W perp. Okay. I will give you an example later that if we try to extend this to Hilbert space, which is infinite dimensional, this will be false in general. We can give an example where this is not true. So, our aim is to look at when this sort of result can be generalized. So, what is the generalization of this? That is our goal. Okay. To find a generalization of this, and that is the famous projection theorem in Hilbert spaces. That's what is known as the projection theorem. So, this is the so let us build up this slowly. Instead of giving that theorem and giving a long proof, let us go through very simple things and then put all these things together so that we get the theorem. Okay. So, we will do many things. So, the first thing is a consequence of this approximation result that we had last time. Okay. So, therefore, that is a fundamental lemma. That is from where many things emanate. Okay. So, first an application within the Hilbert space of our, to get another result of our approximation theorem. So, what is it that we want to do? So, suppose I have a closed subspace W and I have a slightly bigger subspace V. Okay. So, let W be a closed subspace of H, V a subspace not necessarily closed. So far we do not necessarily closed of H which properly contains W, a slightly bigger space. Okay. Now, what is meant by saying that it properly contains W? That means there must be at least one fellow who is in V, but who is not in W. So, therefore, there must be a vector here V, which is in the capital V, but not in W. That is what is meant by V contains W properly. So, this therefore, there exists V in V such that V does not belong to W. Okay. Now, this V cannot be 0, because the 0 vector will be lying inside every subspace. So, 0 vector is inside W, V has been chosen outside W. So, V is not equal to theta h, since theta h belongs to W. So, I have this small subspace W, I have a slightly bigger space, therefore, there is a point in that annulus, and that point cannot be the origin, it cannot be the 0 point. Now, that result, I have a closed subspace and a point, therefore, there must be somebody here who approximates him best. So, therefore, by our approximation theorem, there exists a WV in W such that norm of V minus WV is less than norm of V minus W for every W not equal to WV, W belongs to W. Given a closed subspace and any vector, there is a vector in the closed subspace which approximates V with the least error. That is the most important lemma. Given a closed subspace and a vector, there is a vector in that closed subspace which approximates it with the least error. This is the fundamental idea in a Hilbert space. Okay. Now, what? Okay. I will define, look at this difference vector. Now, let me give you a parallel thing in the what happens in finite dimensions. Just for example, let us take the 3-dimensional space. This is the plane, that is my W. Every subspace is closed, everything is moment it is subspace, it is closed, Hilbert space, everything. So, now I take a vector which is outside this. What is the vector which is closest to that? It is just the orthogonal projection. So, we just project it into this. Okay. Now, this is the vector V and this is the vector WV, okay, inside that space. Now, what is this vector? I am sorry, this is the vector V. Now, you drop the this vector. What is this vector? This plus this is equal to this. So, that will be V minus WV. It is just the law of parallelogram, a law of addition of forces. So, what happens to the difference vector? The difference vector is normal to the plane, which means it is perpendicular to all the vectors. Similarly, we want to see whether the closest vector and the original vector, if I define the difference, will it be normal to all the vectors in W? Okay. We define that, then the theorem is it is true. Okay. So, the first result is that. So, let me then U is perpendicular to all vectors in W. That is the first theorem. So, what is our first result? I will write it. Now, we will prove it later. So, what do we get? this is our first observation, W closed subspace V contains V subspace properly contains W, V belongs to V minus W, WV best approximation of V from W, all this imply U equal to V minus W. V is perpendicular to all vectors in W. This is the first result. Okay. This is a common sense result which we got in, we see it in 3 dimensions, but then we do not know what is going to happen, but it is going to happen. Okay. But you see, in n dimensions, in infinite dimensions, if I did not have this closed subspace, I do not even know the existence of the closed fellow. It may not be, there may not be anybody who is closest to him. We saw an example, okay, but we will see more examples. So, there may not be anybody closest to him. To have somebody closest to him, first requirement is that we have a closed subspace, otherwise that would not have happened. In the finite dimensional case, I did not need that hypothesis because every subspace was automatically closed. Okay, so we have this is not yet proved, these are all, this is claimed. So, I will put a star, this has to be proved. Whenever I have not proved something, I will put star. That is the first result. Okay. Next, of course, I will come to this notion of perp. Let me write this and write the important summary there. Whichever I have not proved, I will mark it with a star. So, suppose now I have a Hilbert space H and I take any set S, it is not necessarily a subspace. Okay. So, let S be any non-empty subset of H. Then naturally the perp I define to be all those vectors which are perpendicular to it. So, we define S perp to be those vectors which are perpendicular to all vectors in S. So, what is the definition therefore? S perp is all those vectors in H such that x comma s equal to 0 for every s in S, because it must be perpendicular to all the vectors. Perpendicular means the inner product must be 0. So, I take the subset S and I take some kind of a pencil of all those fellows who are put all the pencils which are perpendicular to that part. Okay. Now, this S perp is a subspace. Irrespective of whether S was a subspace or not, S perp is always a subspace and S perp is a closed subspace. So, that is my second result. Okay. Second, 2. Again, I have not proved it. For any non-empty set subset S of H, S perp, which is the set of all x in H, such that x s equal to 0 for every s in S, is a closed subspace. Two things here. One, it is a subspace, and the other thing, it is closed. The subspace is an algebraic property. Closedness is a topological property. Okay, is a closed subspace of H. So, that is the second question. This thing. In particular, I can take S to be a subspace. If S is a subspace, W, then W perp will be automatically a closed subspace. So, closed subspace, let me write it, irrespective of whether S is a subspace or whether S is closed. Whether S need not be closed set, S need not be a subspace, still S perp will be both closed and will be both and closed and S subspace. So, in particular, for any subspace W of H, W perp is a closed subspace. Now, irrespective of whether W is closed, because this is already a subspace now, irrespective of whether W is closed or not. That is the second observation. If we have a subspace, the set of all vectors which are perpendicular to it will also form a subspace, but whether this is a closed subspace or not, that will be a closed subspace. Okay. That is the second observation. The third observation will make is, suppose you have S and S1. Okay, let me first look at this. Suppose I have S and I look at its S perp. Okay. Now I am interested only in W. Okay. So, let us take W a subspace and look at its W perp. Okay. A subspace W and its all the orthogonal vectors. Now, suppose somebody belongs to both of them. What will happen? X belongs to W and X belongs to W perp. Now, because he belongs to W perp, he must be orthogonal to everybody in W and therefore, he must be orthogonal to X. So, this says X comma X must be 0, but that means only X is equal to theta H. The inner product with itself is 0. So, therefore, there is only thing that is common between W and W perp is the 0 vector. So, that we have proved. Okay. So, now I do not put a star for it. Okay. For any subspace W, W intersection W perp is just the 0 vector. These are simple things, so I have proved it. The other things I will come, I will use them. So, I will go through the reasonings. That is the next thing. Okay. The next thing is another simple observation. Suppose I have a set S1 and I have another non-empty set S2. If S1 and S2 are non-empty sets, suppose this is a part of it. Okay. Now, suppose I have a vector which is perpendicular to everybody in S2, certainly is perpendicular to everybody in S1. That means S2 perp is contained in S1 perp. Okay. So, X belongs to S2 perp implies Xs is equal to 0 for every S in S2, which implies Xs is equal to 0 for every S in S1, because S1 is a part of S2 and therefore, that fellow is orthogonal to everybody in S2 and therefore, in particular to everybody in S1, that says X is in S1 perp. So, that says S2 perp is contained in S1 perp. So, if S1 is contained in S2, the perps get reversed. So, that is the next observation we will make. This is also proved. So, okay, we already proved. S1, S2 non-empty subsets such that S1 is contained in S2 implies S2 perp is contained in S1 perp. In particular, true for subspaces. That is, if S1 and S2 are subspaces, or W1 and W2 are subspaces, if W1 is contained in W2, then W2 perp will be contained in W1 perp. So, the inclusion relation gets reversed in perpendicular relation when you take the perp. Okay. So, that is the next simple observation. So, these are all very simple observations. Okay. Next, what I will do is look at a subspace W. Okay, that may or may not be closed. I don't know. And then look at its perp, and I will look at its perp, the perp of the perp, the double perp. This below is the set of all vectors who are perpendicular to them. Now, what do we see? Immediately, everybody here is perpendicular to everybody here, so everybody here goes there. So, W is contained in W perp. So, X belongs to W implies XS is equal to 0 for every S in W perp, which implies X belongs to W perp. So, therefore, W is contained in W perp. Okay. In fact, S is contained in S perp. Okay. Fine. For any subspace W, we have W is contained in W perp. Now, let us look at our example. That is the plane W. The W perp was the normal. Okay, that is W perp. Now, if I take W perp, what do I get? I come back to W. In the finite dimension, I see W perp is equal to W. So, I ask the question, in the general Hilbert space, is W perp equal to W? Take the perpendicular and the perpendicular, will it come back to W? Now, let us make an observation. This fellow is perp of something. The perp of anything is a closed subspace. The perp of anything is a closed subspace. So, this fellow is a closed subspace. So, therefore, there is no meaning in asking whether this is equal to this if W were not a subspace. So, this question does not make sense if W were not a subspace. Okay. So, the W perp is a closed subspace by, what was that? By 2. Okay. So, the question does not make sense. The question has the answer no if W were not a closed subspace, were not closed. Closed subspace. Okay. So, the natural question to ask is if W is a closed subspace, is W equal to W perp? So, the question therefore is, modified question is, if W is a closed subspace, is W equal to W perp? And the answer to this question is yes. That closedness is all the time you need. So, that is the next observation 6. If again I will put a star to it, I have not proved this. If W is a closed subspace of H, then W perp equal to W. Okay, so these are all exactly what we are doing in finite dimension. We are seeing that this closeness of the subspace has to be an additional, because the notion of subspace is an algebraic thing. The topological notion of closeness is automatically guaranteed in finite dimensional spaces. However, since this is not automatically guaranteed in infinite dimensional spaces, every time you have to go on adding that additional hypothesis. Okay. So, okay, so that is the next thing that leads us to the fact that the perp is itself, right. The next one, again what we do in finite dimensions. Suppose I take suppose again in finite dimension, what happens in finite dimensions? If W1 is a subspace, W2 is a subspace, then W1 plus W2, how is it defined? Take a vector, any vector in W1 is added to any vector in W2. So, it is the set of all vectors of the form W1 plus W2, such that W1 belongs to W1, W2 belongs to W2. And this is always a subspace. The sum of two subspaces is a subspace, and W1 plus W2 is a subspace. Now, analogously, therefore, we should ask W1, W2 subspaces in H, then W1 plus W2 automatically is a subspace, because purely an algebraic property, and that algebraic properties are there. So, W1 plus W2 is a subspace, no problem about that. But since we are dealing with closed, all these results says we should be dealing with closed subspaces. The question is, if W1 is a closed subspace and W2 is a closed subspace, is W1 plus W2 a closed subspace? So, the question, if W1 and W2 are closed subspaces, we will just prove this in a restricted situation and then show that it is true. Is W1 plus W2 a closed subspace? Okay. Now, in general this may not be true, but what we are going to prove is the following. That is the next result. Okay, that's the. So, if W1, W2 closed subspaces and W1 is perpendicular to it. What does this mean? Every vector here is perpendicular to every vector there. That is xy equal to 0 for every x in W1, every y in W. Every vector here is perpendicular to it. Does not mean that W2 is the W1 perp. It is part of W1 perp, and W1 is a part of W2 perp. Not all the vectors perpendicular to W1 might have been taken here, and all the vectors perpendicular to W2 might have been taken here. But whatever is taken in W2 is perpendicular to W1, and whatever is taken in W1 is perpendicular to W2. Then W1 plus W2 is a closed subspace. Okay, that's the answer. That's the type of small answer. That's enough for us for the purposes of the projection theorem. Putting all these things together is the projection theorem. Adding all these ingredients slowly is what gives the projection theorem. So, now suppose I have W1, W2, W1 a closed subspace. of H. Okay. Then we look at the perp. Then we have W1 perp. See, now we are having this. I can take W1 to be, let me take W. Okay. Let W be a closed subspace and look at its perp. Now, for this 7, I can take W to be W1 and W2 to be W perp. So, apply 7 with W equal to W1 and W perp equal to W2. What do we get? We get W1, let us call this space as U, U equal to W1 plus W plus W perp is a closed subspace. Okay. The 7 says if you take W1 and W2 like this, then W1 is perpendicular to W2 and that 7 result says then the sum must be a closed subspace. Okay. And since W intersection W perp is what? By 3, W intersection W perp is equal to theta h by 3. This will be a direct sum. What is meant by direct sum? Any vector can be written as the sum of a vector here and a vector here in only one way. That can be expressed as a sum is this. Direct means that uniqueness. So, it is uniquely expressed as the sum of a vector in W and a vector in W perp. So, that follows from 3. So, now I have a closed subspace which is W plus W perp. Now, look at W. This is certainly contained in U. W is certainly contained in U because any vector in W can be written as that vector plus the 0 vector. So, therefore, it is in U. So, W is contained in U, W perp is also contained in U. So, if you take sum of subspaces, each subspace is in that sum. Okay. It is like taking union of sets, then every set is in that union. It is exactly the same way in this case. There the operation was union, here the operation is sum, vector sum. Now, W is perp, W is contained in U, then this says the perps get reversed. So, therefore, that says U perp is contained in W perp. Similarly, W perp is also contained in U, that says U perp is contained in W perp perp. Right? So, that says U is contained in W perp as well as W perp perp. Therefore, it is in the intersection. But this says the only fellow who can be intersection of something and along with its perp is the 0 vector. So, U perp must be the 0 vector. So, this says U perp is contained in W perp intersection W perp perp. That says U perp is just the 0 vector by whatever that number is, 3. For any subspace, the intersection of it with the orthogonal complement must be the 0 vector. So, if U perp is 0 vector, what is U perp perp? It is the whole space. Everybody is orthogonal to the 0 vector. U perp perp is equal to the whole space. Now U is a closed subspace. For a closed subspace, result 6 says the perp perp must be the original space, but u perp is equal to u by 6 since u is a closed subspace. Closed subspace. So, therefore, we get H equal to W plus W perp. That is a direct sum, because U is equal to W plus W perp, the whole space. That is our theorem, projection theorem. Given any closed subspace W, H can be written as W plus W perp. So, we have the projection theorem. So, that is the number main theorem. So, therefore, what shall I write this? So, I will erase this. Therefore, theorem called the projection theorem if W is any closed subspace of H, then H equal to W plus W. Okay. Now, what is this theorem? So, that is, you see, all these ingredients are put together slowly into that theorem. So, given any closed subspace, the whole Hilbert space is split into two parts, one along W and one along its particular perpendicular, which is the general Pythagoras theorem actually. Given any vector can be projected and all those Pythagoras results will be valid in this general set. So, what does this say? So, okay. So, therefore, if you prove all those things, we will have the theorem. So, our job will be only to put these pieces together one by one. Okay. All are simple pieces, it is very easy. The only first one may be a little bit tricky, but the rest of them are direct verifications. Okay. Now, what does this theorem tell? It says, given any x in H, there exists a W1 in W and a W2 in W perp unique. I will put exclamation means unique. That this symbol there exists followed by an exclamation mark means there exists unique. There exists unique a W1 in W1 and W2 in W perp such that x is equal to W1 plus W2. Any vector can be split. See, now the splitting starts, divide and rule. The whole space can be split into two parts, and that means every vector can be split into two parts, one part belonging to W and the other part belonging to W perp, and this splitting is unique. Okay. What is this W1 and what is this W2? Well, the name is W1 is called the orthogonal projection of x onto W1. Remember how we got in the plane? You get a vector, you want this, so you just project it and you get it. So, that is called the orthogonal projection. That is why it is called the projection theorem. W1 is called the orthogonal projection of x onto W, and W2 is called the orthogonal projection of x onto W perp. What is this W1? So, what is this W1? Once you know W1, you know what is this W2, because it is x minus W1. Okay, so all you have to do is know what is W1, or you know what is W2, then you know W1. So both are same. If you want to say I know W1, that means I am going to take this as the space and do the decomposition. I know W2 means I will take this as the subspace and do the decomposition. W per perp is W itself, so the same thing. So you can choose one of them and work the other one is the perp. So therefore, what is this W1? Okay. So now look at this. Shall I erase the theorem now? So now, okay. Suppose here is H. Say here is W and here is the perpendicular. So this is W and W perp. So let me draw some big picture. Okay. Now I have an X. That X is this W1 plus W2. Okay. Now suppose X is here itself. Then I can take W1 to be X and W2 to be 0. That is one decomposition. I know it is unique, therefore that must be the decomposition. So if X is in H, X is in W, clearly W1 equal to X, W2 equal to theta H is one decomposition of X, but since this is unique, since it is unique, this is the only decomposition. So we write X equal to X plus theta H. That is our decomposition. There is no problem at all. The next question is, if X is not in W. Of course, if X is in W perp, what happens? Then W1 is 0, W2 is X. Okay. So that's also will take. Okay. So if X is in W2, W perp, then clearly X equal to theta H plus X is the decomposition. This is in W, this is in W perp. This is the decomposition. So the real non-trivial case is when X is neither in W nor in W perp and lives somewhere there, right. So the only non-trivial case is to find the decomposition is when X does not belong to W and X does not belong to W perp. Now we have started, that's it. When you take somebody, here is a big space and here is a small space, you have taken somebody outside, then there will be somebody inside that W who will approximate him, and then the difference is orthogonal, he is in W perp. Okay. So let's see what does that mean. So by now apply 1 with the following. V as double H, apply this one as V as H, then H contains W and H is not equal to W because there is a vector which is outside W. So now for that vector, then there exists a Wx, okay, and V equal to X. Then there exists a Wx in W such that norm x minus Wx is less than norm x minus W for every W in W, W not equal to Wx. That is the best approximation. Okay. All you have done is we have replaced this V by X, and then this x minus Wx is orthogonal to all the vectors in W. That means x minus Wx is in W perp. Okay. Then x minus wx is perpendicular to all vectors in W by 1. Therefore, x minus wx belongs to W perp. Then x equal to wx plus x minus wx. This fellow is in W, this fellow is in W perp, so that is a decomposition, but we know it is unique, so that is the only decomposition, E is the decomposition. Okay. So, therefore, what is that projection? It is precisely the point which is closest to it in that subspace. Finally, the Wx, what was this Wx? That fellow was the closest to x in that subspace W, what we do see in geometry in 3 dimension. That is the closest point in the plane is the orthogonal projection. So, this is a grand victory in a sense for Euclid, okay, because that all that Euclidean geometry is generalized. So, many of these spaces therefore are called Euclidean spaces. The Hilbert spaces are generally referred to as Euclidean spaces. Okay. There all these Euclidean geometry goes through. So, how do I get the projection? Given the whole space and give me any subspace, any vector has a shadow inside this subspace, and that is an orthogonal shadow. Okay, that is called the orthogonal projection, because there is a corresponding perpendicular remainder of it, and that original force has been decomposed as 2 orthogonal forces. Okay. So, this is the fundamental projection theorem, which is the generalization of the fact that if we have a force acting in the plane, it can be resolved into a force along the x direction and a force along the y direction. That fundamental thing which you learnt in high school or intermediate is now generalized to this level, that any force in any Hilbert space can be decomposed into in any subspace and it is perpendicular. That is the main complete general projection theorem for the Hilbert spaces. Of course, this is true modulo all the stars I have put. I hope you remember all these stars. I will prove them one by one in the next class, but let me see what are the consequences of this. Okay. Some of the consequences. Okay. So, therefore, so this is, if you want to call lemma 1, lemma 2, these are all lemma 3, lemma 4. That is the theorem. Theorem follows from lemma. So, split the proof into, so actually go backwards. If I want to have, I want to have this. If I want to have, I want to have this. 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 So, it's actually going backwards. You get all these results that you need. Okay. So, now some consequences. So, this decomposition consequences. Of course, the first consequence is that x belongs to H implies there exists unique W1 in W, W2 in W. Let me, okay, W perp such that x is equal to W1 plus W2. Of course, this W1 and W2 will depend on x. For different x, there will be different decomposition. Okay. Secondly, once you get this decomposition, the general Pythagoras theorem holds. If I have 2 perpendicular vectors, the Pythagoras theorem says the hypotenuse square is equal to the sum of the 2 squares. The hypotenuse is the sum vector and the bases and the vertex or the leg or the 2 things. So, the generalized Pythagoras theorem is that if you take norm x squared, that is equal to x comma x, which is equal to W1 plus W2 comma W1 plus W2. Now, this is W1 comma W1, which is norm W1 squared. W1 comma W2, that is 0, because W1 and W2 are perpendicular to each other. W1 is sitting in W1, W2 is sitting in W2 perp, so that's 0, and similarly the other one. So, the two perpendicular pieces, you take their length squared, you get the hypotenuse length squared. That is the generalized Pythagoras theorem. Okay. So, it is pushed all the way up to subspace level, okay, closed subspace level. So, that is the So, therefore, whenever you I will give you an example next time, I am running out of time, where these things will be false if you do not have that closeness hypothesis on the subspace. That is crucial. Everything will fall apart. I mean, just go to pieces if you do not have the closed subspace. So, whenever you are working in Hilbert spaces and want to use these ideas which are similar to what we do in finite dimensional spaces, make sure that you have these closed subspaces. If you did not, then have that subspace, work with the closure of that subspace. That's take whatever subspace you are interested in, then take the closure of the subspace and then work with that closed version of that subspace. Otherwise, the results will fall apart, really go to pieces, messy, it will become messy. Now, of course, you see everything now boils down to similar to finite dimensional spaces. What we say is any vector can be split, the norms are split, and similarly the inner product can be split. If we have a vector x, then equal to W1 plus W2, and you have a vector y which is U1 plus U2, then x comma y will be this comma this comma this. Okay, let me write it as W1. Okay, if you take this comma this, I will get W1 comma U1. What will be W1 comma U2? 0, because this is in the W perp, this is in W. Similarly, this comma this will be 0 plus W2 comma U2. So, what this says is the inner products also get split. You split the vector and do the individual inner products, you will get the total inner product. So, the work is split into two parts. Really, you can now breathe a little bit better, because now I can start dividing. Divide and rule is possible. Then the idea is, once I know it, divide this, divide this, divide this, divide this, divide this, break them to as low level as possible, and then we have big direct sum decomposition. Each piece is a very simple piece, and finish off the work. Okay, that's the general idea. Once you know how to break it into two pieces, break each piece into two pieces, and so on and so forth. That business starts. Okay. And another thing is, if we have a basis for this, because this is a closed subspace, therefore it is a Hilbert space by itself. I can have an orthonormal basis for this. I can have an orthonormal basis for this. I can put them together. I will get an orthonormal basis for the whole space. So, the basis will be split into two parts, norm will be split into two parts, inner product will be split into two parts, and the vector is split into two parts. The whole space, the problem is split into two parts, and therefore everything gets decomposed into smaller and smaller pieces, and we can do essentially many things that we do in finite dimensional spaces. And one of the things that we do in finite dimensional spaces is matrix theory. That is the heart of linear algebra and finite dimensional spaces. Now, what is the corresponding version that we have to do? So, subspaces, we had needed an additional thing like closed subspaces. Now, similarly, matrix was a linear transformation. So, we have to look at linear operators here. But then linearity is only a algebraic concept. Here is this topology hanging around there. What is the corresponding one? That is what we saw, the continuity of the operator must be taken into account. So, therefore, we must look at continuous linear operators. But when you look at continuous linear operators, everything that do with matrix totally flops. So, when you have a matrix, there is necessarily an eigenvalue, a complex section. The characteristic polynomial is there, and a characteristic polynomial is a polynomial with complex coefficients. Fundamental theorem will say that any polynomial with complex coefficients must have complex roots, n of them. But when you come to infinite dimensional spaces and a continuous operator, there will be problem now. Where is this polynomial? Well, even if you think in terms of this polynomial become a series, infinite series, then you got stuck. A polynomial will have roots, but there is no reason why an infinite series should have roots. For example, the series defining the exponential series, that is a series, but it has no roots because the exponential never vanishes. So, the existence of the eigenvalue itself is under cloud. So, real problems will start. So, therefore, we go back to matrix theory and look at various ways in which we got the eigenvalue, and then we realize there is one particular way of looking at these eigenvalues, and that forces an additional hypothesis here, which is known as the compactness of the operator, and then we will start following matrix theory. Matrix theory correspondingly will have compact operator theory, we have symmetric matrices and Hermitian matrices, correspondingly we will have what are known as self-adjoint operators or Hermitian operators. There we will have the diagonalization, we will have the corresponding diagonalization here also. So, the whole compact self-adjoint operator theory will go through corresponding. So, all we have to do is look at finite dimensional in various ways, which makes you think where what is going wrong. When I try to copy that here, something is going wrong. What is going wrong? Now, to rectify that, put a hypothesis. This one was the one that is this was automatically guaranteed in finite dimensions, but it is not going to be guaranteed here. So, make it a hypothesis. If this is also valid, then things go through. So, what I do next time is indicate the proofs of all these starred businesses, and then look at a little bit more on the structure of the Hilbert space, and then look at the there is one fundamental theorem which we have to look at, which is known as the representation of linear functionals. Okay, that if once we have that also, that is also a generalization of what we have in a finite dimension. We have already seen the notion of linear functionals, bounded linear functionals, Hahn-Banach theorem and all that, but we are going to look at linear functionals and bounded linear functionals in the context of Hilbert spaces. Okay, and then you see whatever we do in finite dimension automatically gets carried over to infinite dimension. So, there are many things that carry over. While carrying over, you may need some additional hypothesis, and we have to scrutinize which is the hypothesis that we need for the carryover of these ideas. So, that is what I will do next. Okay, I will stop here. Next we will meet on Monday.